Welcome to From Our Generation, where we uncover the ideas and events that shape the world we live in today. I'm Crom Carmichael.
And I'm Mike Hassel.
Together we'll explore the past to better understand the present, because history isn't just about what happened, it's about how you think about it. All righty. Well, Michael, it is Friday, February 13th.
Oh,
and I am glad to see that you made it.
I'm well.
With all
for
that
now.
bad luck going on,
Okay.
we did not have a car crash coming in to the show.
Yeah, well, don't say it out loud.
Okay, I won't.
Okay.
All right, edit that. Michael, what we talked about last time was that we kind of teased that we're going to talk about financial independence, defining what financial independence is, and how to develop a strategy. And what you and I are talking about is not new, but we're going to try to cover it from a lot of different perspectives. And I think for younger people, there'll be some things that we say that they had never even thought about. Not they didn't even know it, but they hadn't even thought about it.
Yes.
So because there are things that you and I know because of our age.
Yes.
We have had experiences that when it happened, we go, oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
And we're going to be talking around Social Security and those types of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So initially, let's talk about, because you know when we're talking about this right before the show started, you said you wanted to define what is financial independence, because what we're trying to do today is talk about how do young people think about becoming financially independent. So how do you want to define financial independence?
I wanted to clarify the difference between being rich and being financially independent.
Okay.
A lot of us think from an early age we'd like to get rich, and we think if we have a certain amount of money, our problems go away.
Now, what's your definition of being rich? A rich person is a person who,
well, has a lot of money, okay? And a lot of us don't get further than that. And you and I know it matters whether you have assets, whether you have income, and a bunch of details around that.
Okay.
This is what we're going to talk about, but I'm trying to point out the common conception that your problems are solved if you're rich.
okay. So I just want to try to help people understand. So if you have a couple making $300,000 a year, and they spend every penny of that on a lifestyle that takes that much money after taxes.
Yes, and last week
And
I
they're-
mentioned
and-
London, where you have to do that.
And
my friend.
they're saving nothing.
Yes.
Are you defining that person? Do some people think of those two people as rich?
Well, some people do because they see their cars and their homes and their clothes.
Okay.
And they say, that's who I want to be.
Okay.
That is not what we are talking about here. It's not financial independence because you're depending on that income. And if the income goes away, you're poor.
Okay. So for people who believe that rich would be a condition where people could stop working and
Yes.
live off of their retirement income, live off of the income from their assets,
Yes.
that would be a
Completely-
financially independent
Yes.
person who's rich.
Yes.
Okay.
Completely different.
All right.
Now, first of all, I'd like to say I know a lot of rich people. My experience
Defined
is
as
they have a lot of money.
They-
They have a lot of assets generally, and they often have big incomes too.
okay.
But my point is their problems don't go away. Their problems have extra zeros on them.
Okay.
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 But they do have a kind of independence that I think is marvelous, and that's what we're going to describe how we get to that sort of financial independence.
Yeah, and financial independence for our context is being able to live live on the income from the assets that you have that you have because you have you've had a savings plan over a long period of time. Now, some people, by the way, just so that we can some people's savings plan is to own a small business, and they get to be 55 years old or so, and they sell their business.
Yes.
And they have a one-time liquidity event
Yes.
that may give them $3 million, for example.
Yes.
And then at that point, they no longer need to work. They have $3 million. That $3 million can throw off a certain amount of income
Yes.
each year that they then can live on.
Yes.
And just for purposes of the discussion here, if a person can live nicely off of the income of $3 million of assets, of savings, are we defining that person as financially independent and rich, or are we defining that person as only one but not the other? I'm just trying to. I don't want people to get confused over what you mean by the word rich. I'm trying to.
I would say that they are both. Somebody may look at the way they live and see it so simple that they don't think they're rich. Okay, and it may be that they are so controlled in their spending that they don't have a flamboyant lifestyle. They don't appear to be rich, but they've got a lot of money.
So the way you are thinking about a rich person is somebody who has a high standard of living.
Yes.
Okay, but they may not have any savings, but they have a high standard of living.
Yeah, and they're not financially independent.
They have fancy cars. They take great vacations.
Right.
They have a nice house with a big mortgage.
Yeah, two examples come to mind. One is professionals like doctors and lawyers, particularly doctors who may have put off living well, lived on $30,000, $40,000 a year up until their late 30s,
right,
as they get trained, and then they think, "Hey, I deserve to live better than this."
Right.
So they get debt and they have nice cars and all, and then they get a divorce, and then they're into their 50s or 60s till they get any financial independence.
Okay.
Even with a high income. And another example I want to say, my brother-in-law is an accountant and works in a small town. He said there are these people up in the hills that are rich. They're farmers. When they drive,
they're wealthy. They're not.
Yes. Good,
they're wealthy.
Good they're wealthy. They're financially independent.
Yes.
They drive into town and in a beat up car. The clothes they wear would never impress anybody. Mm-hmm. They've got a lot. He sees their tax returns, and so the point is, being flamboyantly and conspicuously wealthy is not the same as financially independent.
So your definition, for purposes of this podcast,
yes,
a person who is rich has a very high standard of living.
Yes.
They may or may not have a large amount of assets.
Yes.
A person who is financially independent has a large amount of assets.
Right.
And may or may not live rich by your definition.
And I've heard bankers say you never know what's behind the curtain.
Right.
You see what somebody drives and you assume that they're rich and financially independent. They may be in hock.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to tell you a funny story. Years ago, this fellow you're talking about, you never know based on what somebody's wearing. This guy was in New York, and he went into a big Madison Avenue advertising agency. This is a true story, by the way. This is probably 40 or 50 years ago. Because I used to be in the Converse athletic shoe business, and so I heard a lot of stories about the shoe industry and whatnot. Well, this guy goes into he's dressed up in a cowboy outfit with the little, what do you call that? Not the tie.
Oh, rope tie?
The little rope tie, the little thing.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Bolo
tie. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
And he had on a cowboy hat.
Right.
And he goes in, cowboy boots and his little thing. He goes into a big advertising agency, and he says, "I'd like to see an advertising executive." And so they put him in a conference room, and some young fella comes out because they don't know who this guy is. He introduces himself. The advertising agent says, "Well, what can I do for you? Why are you here?" He says, "Well, I'm in the shoe store business. I'm from Topeka, Kansas, and I'm in the shoe store business." And the guy says, the young advertising executive says, "Well, how many shoe stores do you have out there in Topeka?" And he goes, "Well, let me think here." He says, 7. And he says, "Sir," he says, "if you only have 7 shoe stores, how on earth do you think you can afford a New York advertising agency?" And he says it with great disdain.
Yeah, condescension.
You're very condescension. And the older guy says, "Well," he said, "you asked me how many stores I had in Topeka." Oh. And the answer is 7. So I had 1,500 across the country with Payless shoes.
Yeah.
And he just got up and walked out.
Well, I mean, you can tell this story on yourself because you owned a shoe distributorship, and I remember you were dating somebody, and they asked what you did. You said, "I sell shoes."
Yeah, well, that's true.
Which is just a way of just kind of dismissing what you really owned.
Right.
And then she thought you were in a store, putting a little rack on people's feet, and wasn't too interested until she found out, no, you had a business that sold shoes. So, we're talking about perceptions
perception stories. But for purposes of this podcast, your definition, the way you want to use rich, high standard of living, may or may not have assets.
Yes.
Wealth, into financially independence, you have wealth.
Yes.
You could not work, and you could still live with a standard of living that you like. So that's what we're going to be talking about: is how do you achieve the second, how do you achieve the first.
And let me attach one other concept to that, which is personal independence. You can be a slave to your habits, right, and never enjoy life because you've squirreled everything away for a day that never comes. So
fair enough.
My view of wealth is to be able to do what I want to do with the people I want to do it with.
Yeah, within reason.
Within reason.
Within
but
reason.
Let me just give a general description that way. And that makes me independent of what job I have to have, a lot of expectations that may come socially. I want to do what I want to do. And I've heard Warren Buffett actually say something very similar to this in an interview after I kind of came up with that view for myself.
Okay.
I don't like to be told what to do. And for me, personal independence involves financial independence, but also social and personal independence where I don't have to show up somewhere to get an income.
Right.
And I've got business school classmates that got to the end of retired and said, now I can do what I want to do. And I think that's the most tragic thing I've heard.
Well, I mean, what we're going to be talking about today is what are the strategies that a young person can implement to acquire financial independence at some point, at some reasonable point in the future.
Yes.
Okay, so what you have is focusing on that. What you have is you have a number of different opportunities to invest money in a way that defers the taxes.
Yes.
Now, I am not a tax specialist. I know that there are certain rules that apply to, say, an IRA.
Right.
I know there are other rules that apply to a 401k. And then I know that there are, I think, even other rules that apply to a Roth 401k. The person who probably has the best radio show on all that would be Dave Ramsey. He is an absolute expert at that. And in fact, what he does is he helps people get out of debt and then save money.
Right.
So he has strategies, and so we're not going to be copying Dave Ramsey's strategy here, but a lot of the things that he advocates, he's more specific.
Yeah.
We're going to be we'll be
general. Let's make it this general to distinguish between pre-tax income and post-tax income.
Yes, but it really matters after tax.
I'm saying it.
Yeah, if you do not use a strategy to save money, which includes not paying taxes on the increase in the value of the wealth.
Yes.
Then at the end of that period of time, you're going to have a lot less money than if you use the tax advantaged strategies that are available by the tax code today.
Yeah, and you mentioned all the rules around 401ks and IRAs and all that. There's a lot of specialists that can help with that. But in general, with some of those, you get to deduct it from your current income, and you don't pay tax this year.
Or you get to deduct it from your current income, or as it becomes more valuable and you sell assets to swap to other assets, you don't pay taxes on your gains until the very end. And that's the more important one.
That's the part that you build wealth is you don't have it taxed along the way.
Yes.
But you can choose to pay taxes now. That's a Roth account. And then you don't pay taxes at the end when, say, it's worth $10 million.
Yes.
And there's a reason to do that, depending on what you think your future income is. But the one I've used is the deductible amounts where I can afford to put away more because I'm not paying tax this year. So just to use round numbers, let's say I'm making $100,000 and I want to put away $10,000. If I do that with after-tax income, I would have had to earn $15,000 basically to fund 10 if I'm paying tax on it.
Right.
So I can put away a lot more on a tax-advantaged
basis. But also the key from the part of what we're talking about, though, is that once you put away that 10, you don't want to be paying taxes
along the way
on the gain that that 10 is experienced. So if say you put it in just simply an interest-bearing account earning 10%.
Right.
If you did it in a tax-advantaged interest-bearing account, that $1,000 that you make in that first year, 10% of $10,000, that $1,000 you don't pay any taxes on it.
Yeah.
If you just simply take $10,000 and stick it in a savings account that happens to earn 10%, you have to report that $1,000 as income
and pay tax on it.
And if you're in the 20% tax bracket, you're going to pay $200.
Right.
So now you have less money to work for you.
Right. It's
over
like
a long
bucket
period
with
of time.
little pinpricks in it.
Yes.
And so the former are called qualified accounts. They exist under rules that means they don't get taxed along the way.
Yeah.
And they may be deducted from your income when you pay it in. A lot of reasons that the government is encouraging you to put away your money.
Right. Right. So So let's talk a little bit.
And maybe the first rule for young people is max that out. If you work for an employer, especially if they are matching that.
And that's a 401k.
Yeah.
That is a 401k.
That's right.
Where an employer will establish a 401k plan, which they might say, we will match the first 5% of an employee's income up to $100,000.
Okay, so let's say that employee, you make $100,000, they will put in up to $5,000.
If you put up $5,000.
If you put up $5,000.
Right.
And so when my daughter came of age, I said, Emily, you have to do this. You should not make any other choice because it's 100% ROI, return on investment.
Yeah.
In the year that
the matching money is 100%.
Is 100%. Then you get whatever ROI comes on top of that as it grows over time without being taxed. But immediately you are getting a double.
Well, not only are you getting a double, that double is now working for you forever.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Well, I mean, you're getting a double in that first year.
Yeah.
That's 100% ROI.
Yes.
But then that...
Yeah, just what I said.
Okay, all right.
There's two levels of it, but it's a double right off the bat.
Right off the bat.
And then over 50 years, it may be a 10X.
Yes. So, for example, if you take $1,000, let's just use simple math. If you take $1,000 and it compounds at 10% after taxes, so no tax effect, it compounds at 10%. In 40 years, that $1,000 is worth $43,000.
Right.
If the employer matches that $1,000 initial one is now worth $86,000 because the employer put in another $1,000.
Yes.
So it's double the amount at the end. And so
that's right.
So employees who work for companies with matching 401ks, the best advice that you and I can give them is take advantage of that as much as you possibly can.
Yes, and let me add, as early as you can.
Yes.
Because compounding is an exponential curve.
Yes.
It looks like a kind of one side of a U.
Yes.
And the big returns come in the end. Okay.
That's correct.
The first year, the difference between $1,100 and $1,000 doesn't look that big. But at the end, the difference between, $3 million and $3.5 million is big because the increments are large at the end. But if you don't start early, you never get there.
Well, actually, you could say it's the difference between $3 million and $6 million. Because let's just.
I was struggling. I'm making up the numbers.
One becomes two.
Yeah.
This is compounding. This is what compounding
every 7
does.
years.
Every 7 years, one becomes two.
At a 10%
two becomes
rate.
4. Yeah.
At a 10% rate.
Right.
We talked about the rule of 72s.
Right.
Which you divide 72 by the rate per year. And if it's 10%, which is a historical number in the market, you double every 7 years.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so one becomes two. Two becomes 4.
4 becomes 8.
8.
16,
Then this is where it's 16, 32, and 64. And it's that last one.
Yeah.
It's that last one that is the huge one.
And you never get there if you start at age 40.
Correct.
You need to start at 20 or 25.
Yes.
And this is part of the problem is a lot of people, and I was one of them. I got out of graduate school and I was poor as a church mouse. I had no money. But, you think about, in business, we think about margin structure. Out of 100% of what I earn as revenue, how am I going to spend it? What piece of margin goes to which people? You can do that with your own budget. And if there's some piece of that budget that you can find, allocate, to put away, whether it's $100 a month or $1,000 a month or $10 a month, whatever it is, it can be expanded as you prosper, as you grow and your income grows. But not to do it at all means you put yourself in the position of those people that start when they're 40 and they don't have time to ever get rich.
So as a bigger theme, when somebody says, well, how do people become wealthy? And generally speaking, unless you are a professional where you make a very, very high income, and that could be a doctor, it could be a lawyer. Not all doctors and lawyers, by the way, make huge incomes. Pediatricians don't make huge incomes.
Right.
There are a lot of lawyers who don't make huge incomes.
Right.
So what I'm saying, or if you're a professional athlete or a professional entertainer or something like that, then you can make a great deal of money on your own efforts.
Right.
But most people, in order to become financially independent, the way I say it is, you make money by letting other people work for you.
Yes.
And they say, well, how do you do that? You say, well, you invest in companies where they are working for themselves, but you are a shareholder.
Right.
And they are working for you. They're trying to better their lives. And in the process of trying to better their lives, they're going to better your life.
Yeah.
And
you are an owner of
You're
their
an owner of a
enterprise.
business, and so the more the more money that you're able to set aside and invest, and we're going to talk about some strategies here that I think are very good strategies for people who are working, and maybe they have a family, but the key thing is they don't have the time or the inclination to study stocks and pick individual stocks.
Right.
I would say anyone who thinks that they can successfully pick individual stocks over a long period of time is either they're extremely lucky or they're fooling themselves. So the better strategy is to recognize that there are certain indexes that you can invest money in, and an index would be, we mentioned these before, like the Dow Jones 30 Industrial Average. Right. Now that is 30 particular companies. Now and I don't know exactly who selects those 30 companies, but I do know that over a period of time, if whoever it is selecting, and I'm sure there's some kind of a criteria, if a company is not performing the way it's supposed to, they remove it from the Dow Jones 30 and they replace it with a company that is performing the way it is, the way that the Dow Jones people believes it should.
So its intention is to be an index, a number that reflects the economy overall.
Actually, better than the economy overall, and that's the point.
Okay.
Because the economy overall does not grow at 10%.
Right.
But the Dow does.
Okay, it started out as the Dow Jones Industrial Average. You can just put into Google DJIA, and this stuff will start showing up. We've talked about before, it increasingly is not so industrial. It reflects technology and other kinds of things. But it is an index that's intended to show some picture of
high-performing large companies. Okay. It's high-performing large companies is the way to think about it. It doesn't reflect how the economy is doing per se.
Yeah.
Now, if the economy goes through a recession, then the Dow generally goes down. Okay? Now, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. In fact, let's talk about that right now. The Dow Jones average over a long period of time, over the last, because we mapped it out, over the last 40 years, if you invested $1,000 40 years ago in the Dow, just that average, in 40 years it becomes worth $43,000. That's the growth, which is much greater than the rate of growth of the economy in that same 40 years. The economy has not grown 40 times in that same period of time. So you're growing it better than the economy. You're probably growing at better than the rate of inflation also. And so, but the key thing is this: it doesn't go up at 10% every single year. Some years there might be some recessionary problem, and the Dow may drop 30 or 40%. And you look at your stocks and you go, oh my gosh, my stock portfolio is down 30 or 40%. The smartest thing you do at that point is continue to invest, continue to take that portion, because now you're buying stocks on sale, as you and I talked about.
Stocks are on sale.
Yeah, it's the very same stocks you were buying before. Now they're 30% cheaper, and that means you get more of them for the same amount of money. So let's make it real simple. If the Dow were to fall in half and you were to invest, you get to buy twice as much at that point. And then when it goes back up, you have twice as much working for you.
There was a banker in Europe named Rothschild, one of the biggest, wealthiest families in Europe. I think his words for that were, time to buy is when blood's running in the streets.
Yeah.
It means everybody else is scared. They're selling off things that, they're getting out.
Right.
Exactly the wrong thing to do if you believe the world is going to continue to get better, as it has for hundreds of years.
Yes.
For the last few hundred years, at least, since the beginning of the United States.
That's right. What's key here is, and we're talking right now, is we're giving ideas for people who are in their 20s, 30s, and maybe their 40s.
Yes.
Because if the stock market goes down, and there are periods where the stock market dropped and it was 10 years before it completely recovered.
Yes.
But during that dip of 10 years is when, if you're continuing to buy, then when it recovers. I heard a broker say the other day on the radio that the Japanese stock market has been flat for 25 years. And that's false. It hasn't been flat for 25 years. Today it is where it was 25 years ago, but it collapsed 25 years ago.
Now it's just getting back to where it was.
Now it's getting back to where it was. So if you'd been buying all the time after it collapsed,
you'd have a lot more.
You'd have a whole lot more, and all it's done is getting back to even.
Right.
So the key element here, the key takeaway here, Michael, is one, make sure that your investment entity is tax advantaged, meaning that it doesn't pay taxes on the profits as they are accumulating. That's the key point.
Right.
Whether you do it pre-tax or after-tax at the time of your investment is secondary on this particular case. Depends on your situation. But for everybody, you do not want to be paying taxes on the gains as they are happening.
Right.
So that's one thing. Second thing is, if you work for a company with a 401k, take as much advantage of that as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Figure out what to do as early as you can.
There's a guy here in town who used to be the treasurer at Vanderbilt, and he now runs an investment firm. And he wrote a book called Get Rich Slowly, I think is the name of it, Bill Spitz.
Bill Spitz,
And
yeah.
we're talking about here the techniques.
Very bright guy.
Oh, yeah, very smart.
Yeah.
And these are reliable angles or principles or patterns and understandings of the way economics works that will build wealth over time. Compounding is one of the most powerful forces in the world. There's jokes that Einstein said that. I don't think he really did, because he was a physicist, not a financial guy. But it still applies. Compounding is very reliable and low risk.
Yes.
Now, I want to talk about another conception of wealth, which is that you're going to hit it rich. You're going to strike gold. Your ship is going to come in. There's all these cultural references to all of a sudden getting rich. To do that, you've got to speculate. And generally, you lose.
Yes.
You and I have started new businesses, and we know that you make 10 of those bets, 6 or 7 are going to come up black holes, or maybe just get your money back barely, just scratch out. But not anywhere near most of them are going to prosper. You just need 1 or 2 to prosper. But they're speculative. And if you want to make generational changing wealth, you put a little aside, maybe 3 to 5% of your portfolio to do that. But it's not wise to put more than that percentage of your portfolio.
Well, and if you don't have a portfolio, then you can't do it. Then your strategy is to do it all and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that if you are studying the markets, if you're studying stocks, and that's what you do for a living, then it's possible that you might be a good stock picker. But 99% of the people who invest money and are trying to build independent wealth are not financially. That's not what they do every day.
Yes.
And so what you do is you take advantage of these broad indexes where they are designed. Those indexes are designed and managed to do better than the economy.
So let's talk about being managed. Okay, I was just thinking of this. There's a guy, John Bogle, a few decades ago that said, you actually do better by not really managing things. You buy something that matches the market as closely as you can, and it's called a low-cost mutual fund. His company was famous for this, and they did very well. Now, that means you're not paying somebody to make selections for you and go into a different side of the market because the economy is rotating this way. I do actually have a financial manager who does this for me.
Okay.
Because he's managing my portfolio to meet my objectives. When I retire, what I want to have, what I'd like to give to my children, other things like that. And so there are tweaks that he does along the way. So I have managed money, okay? But the data, and you can see this on the internet, the data say you don't necessarily do better with managed money. I just have confidence it's going to fit me.
Okay.
But there's a great, I think, piece of wisdom in just buying an index that's low cost. So the pinprick that we talked about before, the leakage in fees, there's no taxes if it's in a qualified account. There's not many fees in a low-cost mutual fund.
Right.
And that is a more reliable, surefire way to get
right. And there are some. So let's just list a few. The Dow Jones average is 30 stocks.
That's one index, yes.
And that's one index. And the people who determine the 30 stocks there are trying to find large companies. These are all large cap companies, large companies that are growing nicely faster than the economy is.
And large cap means large capitalization.
Yes.
They have lots of value in their stock.
Yes, and lots of value in the company. They're just big companies.
In their company, and the stock is a measure of that.
Yes, and they're growing.
Yes.
And they're not big companies that are shrinking, because there are some big companies that shrink. General Motors was a huge company at one point, and then it shrunk to bankruptcy.
Yeah.
General Motors was thrown out of the Dow Jones average many, many years before it went bankrupt. Many years.
Yeah. And they're about to write off not just General Motors, but a bunch of automotive companies, like $50 billion, I think, in money they've invested in EVs.
Right, and I don't know if there are any automotive companies that are in the 30.
Yeah. I'm just making even the big companies ride a roller coaster.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm saying that. But the people who select those stocks, then there's the S&P 500, which
broader.
is 500 large companies. Yeah. Then you have the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ is a different index. There's a lot of overlap. For example, Microsoft and Apple and NVIDIA may very well be in the Dow Jones 30. They're definitely in the NASDAQ.
Right.
And so there's a lot of overlap. And then the last one, and this one is a different index, it's the Russell 2000 or the Russell 3000. And those are small cap companies. So these are,
when you say a different index, you mean it has less overlap with, you wouldn't be in both. You wouldn't be in a small cap company and a big cap index.
It couldn't be.
You couldn't, yeah.
Could not. Those companies are different.
Right.
So once your assets get to be of a certain size, you may decide to take a portion of that and invest it in the Russell index. Right. Because over time, during periods of time, the Russell index does better than the others. But at other times, it does worse. But generally speaking, those indexes all do reasonably well. Now, there's another one, for example, and the symbol is NOB, as in boy, L, Nobel, and it's called the Aristocrat Fund.
Okay,
and it's a fund of stocks where the dividend of you cannot be your stock if you're the company. Your stock will not be listed in the Aristocrat Fund unless it has increased its dividend for each of at least the last 25 years.
Okay.
And the reason this matters is this gets back to grow wealthy slowly. Yeah. This means that every year that dividend is going up. And if you are in a tax-advantaged 401k or IRA,
you're not paying tax on it.
You're not paying, and it's being reinvested.
Right.
So you're not paying taxes on the dividend, and it's automatically being reinvested for you. That is another, and you look at that, and that's another of these indexes.
Right.
And so the point that we're saying here, Michael, is not. This is for regular people. The key takeaway is if you want to become financially independent, let other people work for you.
Yes.
The way you do that is invest in companies where the people who are working in those companies are trying to improve their lot in life by providing a good or service that people want to buy. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And if they do it well, then the value of their company will go up, and the value of your assets will go up.
They will benefit, and you will benefit.
Yes. So make sure that your vehicle is tax advantaged. If you can do a matching, make sure you do that. And the most important, well, all these are important, but one of the really key thing is when the market dips, keep buying.
Yes.
When the market dips, keep buying. Do not become disappointed. In fact, be happy. Say, this is great. This is a buying opportunity. Yeah. I get to buy more stocks.
Which is counterintuitive. Most people get scared and they want to get their money out before they lose any more.
Right.
Then they've already lost when they lock in their losses.
And then it pops back up, and they missed the first 10 or 15%.
Right.
So don't take your money out. Invest in these indexes, and do that consistently over a long period of time. And at the end of that period of time, Michael, at the end of 40 years, that person will be what you and I are defining as financially independent.
Yes.
Now, whether or not you're rich is it's different because rich depends on what a person thinks their standard of living ought to be.
Yes.
I've got a friend of mine who's done extremely well. And he was telling me, he was laughing. He's got a financial advisor who does a great job for him. But this guy has done so well that he was thinking about buying a yacht. And he was telling he does very well.
Yeah.
And he was telling his financial advisor, he's thinking about buying a yacht. He says, if you buy a yacht, I'm going to resign as your financial advisor. There's nothing stupider than buying a yacht. He says, how long do you think you'll be on that yacht a year? What's the maximum? Because the guy's still working, by the way. Very busy.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, Well, maybe a month. Okay, he says, all right. Are you sure you'd want to be on it for 2 weeks a year? He said, yes. He says, all right, well, then let's buy you a 2-week interest in a yacht.
Yes.
And so instead of owning a yacht, which includes maintenance of the boat, captains, and all the stuff you have to have, he spends $100,000, which is a lot of money. He spends $100,000 a year,
right,
so that he can be on a really, really nice yacht for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Well, I moved somewhere that has a swimming pool. I don't want a swimming pool in my backyard because the cost of maintaining it, same
and the risks. And
boats in general, I've heard, are holes in the water through which you pour money.
Into which you pour money.
For the reasons you've just described, it's better to own a fractional interest or a capacity to rent.
Yeah.
Rather than having a vacation home, you just go and rent something there every year.
That's right. Now, vacation home might be different.
It might be.
Because it might go up in value. Yachts do not go up in value. That's the one thing we know is that over time yachts go down in value.
Right.
Now, a jet plane, once again, if you want to fly privately, it's much better to spend money and do a charter, rent somebody's private jet, and do that.
When we say it might make sense to own multiple homes, you might think of these as assets. And if you buy something in a growing area,
that's what
that asset will. That's very true. But what's required is to distinguish between consumption and investment.
Bingo. You do not buy the second home rather than invest your money the way we're talking about. Right. You do this part first.
Yes.
And then at some point after this is working, and I would say that just as a general rule. Until you are investing, and this is while you're young, until you're investing at least $10,000 a year in these accounts, you should not be looking, because second homes are expensive.
Right.
Not just the home itself, but the maintenance, the taxes, the upkeep, they're expensive.
Yes.
They cost money.
Right.
And that money is a hole in the ground.
Right.
When you pay insurance for that home at the end of the year,
you have nothing more for it.
Nothing. You pay property taxes. Gone.
Right.
So the other thing, quite frankly, about second homes is it almost ties you into where you're going to go. So you can't travel much because you
elsewhere.
You feel like an idiot.
Yeah. Owning something you don't use.
Yeah. So at any rate, now other people, they might own a second home and they stick it in Airbnb.
Right.
That's a strategy.
Yeah.
But that requires generally there's some headaches to that. So you just have to think through that.
People tear it up.
Yeah.
I had a friend that did that. He bought it. He said, I'll use it X many weeks and I'll rent it the rest of the time. After a few years, they just took it off the market. They renovated it and left it empty when they weren't there because people did not respect it. They'd sit down in the sofas with the wet bathing suit. They'd steal the silverware. A million different ways that did not work for him. So there's a case to be made for owning property, but you have to manage it.
Yeah, there's a time, and that's an element there. So the key thing on our takeaway here: start young, have a strategy, and don't try to think you're smarter than the market.
Yeah.
And so you invest in these indexes. You're not going to make 100 times your money in the next 5 years,
right?
But you should see a consistent increase over time,
right?
And so, Michael, is there anything else that you think we should add to what this is a highly focused podcast on how to become financially independent? We're not trying to define what rich is. We're saying financially independent. I believe you said financial independence is when you have enough assets to where you can do what you would like to do.
With the people you want to do it with.
Yeah.
That's what I would add to that.
Yeah.
There's two other things I can think to talk about. One is Warren Buffett's idea of future value. He talks about making decisions about, do I want this $500,000 car? He's talking about buying a $50,000 car, but he knows that if instead he invested that 50 and he doubled it, that's about 4 times, right?
Yeah.
You go from 50 to 100 to 200 to 400.
Oh,
that's
my
4
goodness,
doubles.
yes.
So he looks out 4 times 7 years, 28 years. I can have $400,000 in 7 years, or I can have this car.
Okay, so what you're talking about now, the topic is now deferred consumption in terms of dollars.
And looking at the value of what you spend now in terms of what it could be worth.
Yes, there are a lot of people who want to have a new car every 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
And that car payment might be $700 or $800 a month.
Right.
Whereas if they bought a used car,
Right.
and they bought that used car for cash, it wasn't a great car, but they paid cash,
Right.
and they took that $700 to $800 a month that they were going to spend on their fancy car and put it in that savings plan. That is how you become financially independent, and you still had a car that got you around.
Sure.
And the same thing is kind of true on, and I'm guilty of this, by the way. I do not do a good job of managing my cable/apps account.
Right.
I spend more money. I'm not particularly good, I don't think, on my cell phone bill either.
Right.
I think there are ways where I could look at it and I could save 50% on my cell phone bill.
Right.
And if that moved the needle a lot, and we're talking $50 a month.
Right.
Well, that's $600 a year.
Yes.
If you're younger and you're saving that $600 later can be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000.
Yes.
And on your cable bill, if you say I'm not going to spend $200 a month on all this stuff,
Right.
I'm going to spend $50, and I'm going to take that other $150. Right. I think this is probably in Dave Ramsey's baby steps.
Yeah, these are the kinds of things he talks about when you're very disciplined about
very
those
disciplined.
things. I used to work with a guy that brought in two big Starbucks to work every day. Now, this guy had money. He's fine, but I thought that's $10 a day.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was bad, but it's probably more like
$50 a week. $50 a week.
Yeah, well, that's $2,500 a year.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Yeah. And so you look, if you smoke cigarettes, what does it cost you per day to smoke those cigarettes?
Yeah.
What is it, if you're eating, I don't eat out, I don't like to pay more than $8 or $10 for a lunch. And sometimes I'll go to the grocery store and get an apple and an orange and, eat for $2 or $3.
Mm-hmm.
But you spend $15 every day for lunch, that's $75 a week. That's almost $4,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just ways, it's little things that if you sit and think about them, and then you have the discipline. And by the way, then once you start doing it, it becomes kind of second nature. It's not something you have to think that hard about.
It can be a fun game. It can be a depressing way of robbing the joy from your life. So that's the art of this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not that you should become a Scrooge.
Well, you find joy in being economical.
Yes.
You find joy in your decisions.
And in being in control.
Yes. There you go.
One other thing I wanted to say about this, and that is, what is the number that you need to be financially independent? What is the goal? Where do you need to get?
Okay.
And there's a pretty simple mathematical way to think about this.
Okay.
You take what you think your annual income you need to live well. Now,
After taxes.
After taxes, okay? And then you convert it to before taxes, So let's say my bills add up to $8,000 a month, which is a convenient way of saying about $100,000 a year.
Okay.
8 times 12 is 96, so round it up to 100.
All right.
To have 100 after tax, you probably need to make 120 or 125.
Yep.
Okay? So let's say I need to make 125. What do I need?
And by the way, when you say 120 to 125, you're talking about from investment income, not your wages.
I'm talking about from any source. Let me finish. I can do it now from my wages. But if I want to spend the same thing after I stop working, I need to get it from my assets. And whatever it comes from, it's got to be $125 a year.
Yeah. The only thing I'm saying is that if you're making $125,000 on wages, because of Social Security and Medicare, these other things, you actually need to make more than. I'm not trying to be picky here, but I'm going to let you go. Go ahead with your point.
The point is, I need $100,000 in cash after I've paid everything that I got to pay. Whatever you mark it up to that I've got to earn in order to be left with 100, let's say it's 125.
Okay.
Then the question is, what am I yielding on my investments? If all of my income goes away from wages, I stop working, and what do I need to have in assets to produce $100,000 after tax? Because tax rates change. I'm not working anymore, so you find out what that number is.
So that might be 125 pre-tax. Might be 125 pre-tax.
Yeah. But generally, if you're earning 10%, like we said, in assets, and you can sell, let's say you've got $1 million and you earn $100,000, you sell off that $100,000 every year and pay your bills, that kind of matches. Okay, so if I need 125, I need 10 times that. That's 12 and a half, $1.25 million.
Right.
Okay. So that leaves no margin though for
Ups and downs.
yeah, ups and downs and for accidents, if you get sick, things like that.
Right.
So you could say your number is around $1.5 million, $1.25 million, but more comfortably, more safely, a couple million should be able to let you live at that level.
What I've heard people say is that once you're going to live off of your assets, once you reach that point, you should say that you'll be able to get a 6%. You'll be able to use a 6% return on your assets to pay your taxes and live.
Which means in this case, you need about 17 times as much. 6 times 17 is 142.
Well, $2 million. $2 million times 6%. 2 times 6 is 12. So that's 120,000.
Yeah, and I'm doing the math the opposite way. If you have 6% afterwards, you need 100 in assets. 100 divided by 6 is about 17.
Right. Okay.
So take the amount you need and multiply it by 17, and that's the amount of assets you need to produce at 6%.
But remember, that 100,000 is really 125 because you're paying taxes at that point. At that point, you are paying taxes.
You got to be careful about which number you're using.
Yes.
Pre-tax or post-tax.
Yes.
But those basic, simple mathematical ratios can help you identify the number.
Yeah.
Now, that number is ridiculous in New York and California. We were talking before the show about some people that are making $250,000 a year and they're barely getting by.
Right.
Well, they've got private
very,
school
very
tuitions.
Expensive.
That's a different matter.
Yeah.
But in your location, what does it take to live the way you want to live? Or look at your own bills and say, I want to add to this. I can take this away. I don't really have to have that.
Right.
This is the number I need, and then just multiply it by some number like 17.
17. It's not 10 because you can't use when you're building wealth.
Right.
You're going to have some ups and downs.
Right.
Once you have reached the point where you're going to live off of your wealth, you need to be much more conservative in the sense that you don't want the value of your assets to go down.
Right.
Which means that you're going to be living off of the dividends and interest.
Right.
That's pretty much how you're going to do it. Now, one other thing, Michael, that I do want us to talk about, and that is Social Security.
Yes.
Because we were talking about this before the show, and people who are younger, they know what the word Social Security, they know what it means, but they don't know how it works. And the way Social Security works is there's a minimum age, and for purposes of this podcast, I'm going to say the minimum age is 62. That doesn't mean it is, but I'm going to say
it's somewhere around 60 or 62 where you're eligible to start.
Where you can start. But if you start at that point, you're going to be receiving a monthly amount that is much lower than if you had started taking Social Security when it's considered, quote, standard.
Retirement age is what they call it. Standard retirement age.
Yeah, and so standard retirement age today might be, and I don't know if this is exactly right, but we're going to say it's 66 and a half. That's what we're going to say.
Yes.
So if you start taking your Social Security before 66 and a half, they're going to discount how much they pay you by 8%
per year.
Yeah. So it can be a big number. Yeah. And then you're stuck with that forever for the rest of your life.
For 6 years, the difference between say 66 and a half and 61 and a half. 6 years at 8% per year, that's around 50%.
I'm going to say it's 30 to 40%.
Okay,
and then you're stuck at that lower level forever.
Yeah, so meaning you're getting 34% less, so you're getting half to 2/3 of what you would get forever.
Yes. Now then, if you wait until the standard age, then you don't get a deduction, but you don't get a benefit either. You get an amount. If, however, you defer until you reach age 70,
yes,
at which point you have to start taking it, or you don't get any additional benefit, the amount you get goes up 8% a year.
Per year, yes.
If you wait.
Yes.
And then that 8% then becomes locked in.
Yes.
So that then when they figure the cost of living adjustments, it's on that higher number. Okay? So I encourage everybody to wait as long as they possibly can up to age 70. But the other thing is that if both spouses are working during their lifetime, then both of them are getting their own Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
If one of the spouses dies, the remaining spouse gets the highest of the two, but not both.
Yes.
And so that can be a big drop
Right.
in how much money Social Security is paying to that family unit if one of the two spouses dies. And so
so let's go back to apply that to my example. If you've got $100,000 a year in expenses, let's say that's my wife and I, that's our budget that we need
okay.
to pay the way we live. Well, if one of us dies and we're depending on Social Security to pay for that, forget the assets, okay? That's another component they
Right.
can contribute. But just Social Security, then we're expecting Social Security to pay for it. Okay, great. Until one of us dies, then you only have half as much. You cannot stay in that house.
That's correct.
You cannot keep the car that you've got. There's a lot of things you cannot do on half the amount of money.
Right.
You might make up for it by distributions from your assets, by going back to work, any number of things. But it's important to be clear on what those rules are so you can plan in scenarios and plan in safety margins, contingencies where you have options
Right.
for where to pull money from. It's like a lot of wealthy people have multiple sources of income. They don't depend on just their job.
Right. Well, that's
You know,
that's not who we're. That's not really who
but
we're
I'm saying
addressing.
the point
right now.
is that you have multiple options. You're not trapped into having only Social Security. If you got no assets, you're only having Social Security. That's risky.
Yeah.
It's not financially independent.
Yeah.
One other point occurred to me along the way I wanted to add, and that's correlation. This is something that sophisticated investors talk about, is correlation between markets. So, you don't have everything that's tied up in stocks or bonds. Maybe you have real estate. So this is beyond the scope of expertise that we would expect people to have. But let me give a really great example of bad correlation, is if your company offers stock options or stock purchase, where you can buy at a discount, and you keep buying stock in your company.
In your own company.
Mm-hmm. That is severely not correlated, highly correlated. And if something happens to that company, let's say something comes along and they invent a competitor that wipes you out. You've lost your work and you've lost your asset.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that is a case of correlation that you do not want.
Well, you don't want to do that exclusively.
You don't want to be over-correlated where you're going to go up and down in sync. You mentioned something goes better. We were talking about the indexes. Russell may do better one time and DJI another time. You want this kind of diversification where they offset, where one's going up, the other's going down. If you're over-correlated, you're subject to the pendulum.
Right. And what I'm going to push back just a little bit, because your example about investing in your company stock,
right?
That's a single entity investment.
Yes.
If the value of that company goes down and never recovers,
right,
then all of the investments that you've made in that one investment never have a chance to recover.
Yes.
If you're investing in an index of multiple companies,
yes, that doesn't happen.
If it goes down, those multiple companies, when the economy recovers, they will go back up.
Yes, yes.
But the value, if you're one company, so your point is a very good one.
Yeah.
But correlation, I think for people who want to invest primarily in stocks and not include real estate, there may be a point where they have enough assets to say, I want to move into some real estate. That's a whole different level of thinking.
Yes.
It truly is.
Right.
And so it's better if they stick with these broad indexes that are managed by people who make sure that the assets that are in those indexes as a group are going to grow at a higher rate than the economy as a whole.
And so,
and that is where people are working for you.
Yes. And it can be very smart to buy your company's stock. Microsoft and Google have made millionaires out of a lot of employees because they accumulated the stock.
Yes.
From the very beginning in many cases. It's great. The point is not to do that to the exclusion of diversified investments.
Correct.
You may make a great wealth, if you're in Google and Microsoft, great. But there are companies that have done it that did not have that kind of prosperity. Then you have to find another job.
Well, and what you're saying is don't do it exclusively.
Yes.
And that's the lesson.
Right.
Yeah, that's the lesson. Well, Michael, I was going to get into some other things in this podcast, but I think I'd like to stick a pin in this podcast.
Okay.
And stop it right here.
Right.
And then the next podcast, I want to be kind of talking about, you and I have been around. Some ways
you longer than me.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we like to think that we've gained wisdom by our experiences in life.
Yes.
And our observations in real time over the last 50 years.
Yes.
So I want to try to use some of those things and look at what's going on now, and just talk about some of the things that may or may not happen that people who are thinking longer term might want to be aware of.
Yeah, so another way to look at that is we're going to talk about the economic and political and social developments that are affecting what we've just talked about.
Right. That's exactly right. And so we're gonna stop it at this point, and I will see you next Friday.
Okay, great.